It's been 32 years since Demolition Man first gave us a wild look at the future city of San Angeles. The film shows a future that's polished on the surface but hollow underneath, a society so obsessed with peace and control that it ignores the people it pushes aside. Those people end up living underground, forgotten and cut off. But everything changes when two throwbacks from the chaotic 1990s break free and shake up the system. Demolition Man hit theaters back in 1993. In the movie, the two main characters, John Spartan and Simon Phoenix, get frozen in 1996 and aren't brought back until 2032. Basically, we're already more than halfway through their deep freeze. So while we're still waiting, let's dig into 20 weird facts about the movie they didn't show you. The original script was very different. At its core, Demolition Man is about a cop and a criminal locked in an endless fight. They clash, get cryogenically frozen for almost 40 years, and then wake up in the future to continue their battle. That's the story most fans know, but the original script looked nothing like that. In the first version of the screenplay, the movie was supposed to begin directly in 2032. There was no action set in the past, what was then the near future of the mid-90s, and what is now long behind us. The story would have jumped straight into the high-tech world we see later in the film, without any setup or backstory for the main characters. That all changed thanks to Fred Dekker. Even though he isn't officially credited, Dekker rewrote the beginning of the film and gave it a proper prologue. He added the scenes set in 1996, showing John Spartan as a tough cop and Simon Phoenix as a chaotic, violent criminal. These early scenes helped ground the story and gave the audience a clear sense of who these two men were before they were thrown into the future. Dekker summed up his approach with a simple but smart idea. If you don't show Kansas, Oz isn't all that special. Many fans agree that without that contrast, the future wouldn't have felt so strange, and the characters wouldn't have felt nearly as real. Wesley Snipes was almost too fast for the camera. Most people already know that Wesley Snipes brings severe intensity to every role, but if you've watched Demolition Man closely, you might notice that his fight scenes feel a bit stiff or slowed down. That might come as a surprise, especially if you've seen him move effortlessly in films like Blade, where his martial arts skills are on full display. So what's going on? It turns out Snipes was actually too fast. According to reports, he had to deliberately slow down his kicks and punches during filming because the camera couldn't keep up with his speed. If he moved the way he usually did, the shots would blur, and all that precision would be lost on screen. Snipes was also known for doing his own stunts. He insisted on handling the action himself, which made things even trickier for the crew. In fact, Denis Leary once said that some of those scenes had to be secretly reshot at night using a stunt double, just to get the moves on film the way they needed to look. Even when he had to tone it down, Snipes still brought power and style to every fight. The result may look a little more controlled, but that was all part of the process. Being too fast can actually be a problem, at least in front of a camera. Sandra Bullock's Taco Bell dress was quite heavy. There's a scene in Demolition Man where John Spartan and Lenina Huxley go out for dinner at Taco Bell, which, in the future, is the only restaurant still around. During that moment, Sandra Bullock wears a sparkling, futuristic dress made entirely out of gemstones. It looks great on screen, but what most people don't know is that the dress weighed over 40 pounds. That weight made it tough to move around in, and it caused a minor wardrobe issue that actually made it into the final cut. Right after the dinner scene, Huxley excitedly talks about the action that just happened. But if you watch closely, you'll notice something unusual. She suddenly stops moving her arms. That's because the dress ripped. The gemstone-covered gown was so heavy that it tore when Bullock threw herself into the energetic delivery of her lines. After the rip, she had to keep her arms down at her sides for the rest of the conversation to avoid making it worse or revealing the tear on camera. Even though it looks like a small detail, this kind of moment shows how much effort went into creating the film's unique futuristic style. Bullock sold the scene perfectly, even while wearing what was basically a 40-pound costume. Most viewers never noticed a thing, which might mean that the fix worked. The blonde-haired villain connection. Wesley Snipes' look in Demolition Man is pretty unforgettable, especially his striking blonde hair. It helped make his character Simon Phoenix stand out as dangerous and completely unpredictable. But here's a fun bit of trivia. Not everyone knows that Snipes wasn't the only golden-haired villain named Simon in a 1993 movie. That same year, Roy Fegan played a very different character called Simon, the Golden Lord Chief, in The Meteor Man, a superhero comedy. While Snipes' Simon Phoenix was a violent criminal with a lot of edge, Fegan's character was more of a quirky villain in a light-hearted film. It's a strange coincidence that both movies featured blonde-haired villains named Simon, but the characters and stories couldn't have been more different. What's even more interesting is how Snipes' look influenced pop culture beyond just movies. Dennis Rodman, the basketball legend known for his ever-changing hair colors and bold style, has said that Snipes inspired his platinum blonde hairstyle during his most colorful days. Rodman's hairstyle became part of his persona and made as many headlines as his basketball skills. He credited Snipes' fearless style as one of the reasons he felt confident enough to rock such a standout look. So while Wesley Snipes made Simon Phoenix a memorable villain on screen, his bold style also left a mark off screen, shaping trends and inspiring even the most unexpected fans. Taco Bell out, Pizza Hut. In earlier, we mentioned that Taco Bell is the only restaurant left standing in the future world of Demolition Man. For viewers in the United States, that made perfect sense. Taco Bell is a popular and familiar fast food chain. But when it came to showing the film to international audiences, the choice wasn't as straightforward. Outside the US, Taco Bell isn't nearly as well known, and that could make the scene feel strange or confusing. Since the same parent company owns both Taco Bell and Pizza Hut, the filmmakers found a clever way to handle this. For overseas markets, they either reshot some scenes or overdubbed the dialogue to replace Taco Bell with Pizza Hut. This gave foreign audiences a brand they recognized and could relate to without changing the story or the future setting. This approach highlights one of the challenges of product placement in movies, mainly when a film is meant to reach a global audience. Using real brands adds a sense of realism, but it also means filmmakers have to consider how those brands will be seen in different countries. What works well in one place might not work in another. It also makes you wonder if there's a more straightforward way to handle product placement in the future. Constantly reshooting scenes or overdubbing lines can be time-consuming and expensive. Maybe using fictional brands or more flexible product placements could save time and keep the story consistent everywhere. In any case, this slight change between Taco Bell and Pizza Hut shows just how much thought goes into making sure a movie connects with audiences all around the world. Stallone was really into golf. During the filming of Demolition Man, Sylvester Stallone was going through a serious golf phase. According to Dennis Leary, Stallone brought his own driving range, and a professional golf Demolition Man predicted Bullock's career. People often joke about The Simpsons being freakishly good at predicting the future, but Demolition Man deserves some credit too, especially when it comes to Sandra Bullock. At the time the movie was made, Bullock was still early in her career, but Demolition Man drops a handful of hints about where she was headed. One of the most talked about moments comes during a scene where the police are discussing the idea of thawing out John Spartan. In the background there's a small model of a bus. It doesn't look like much, but it's oddly similar to the one seen in Speed, which came out just 1 year later and helped launch Bullock into full-blown stardom. Then there's the Taco Bell connection. In the movie's future, Taco Bell is the only restaurant left standing. Years later, Bullock starred in The Blind Side, where she played the wife of a man who, in real life, co-owned a group of Taco Bell franchises. Coincidence? Maybe, but it's a fun one. And there's one more nod that might make you do a double take. When Bullock's character is explaining to Spartan how much the world has changed while he was frozen, she says the line, "While you were sleeping." That's also the title of a romantic comedy she starred in 2 years later, in 1995. It might not be a reference to Miss Congeniality 2, but it was a nice try. Intentional or not, Demolition Man ends up looking like a weird little time capsule that saw Sandra Bullock's future before the rest of us did. Modern-day LA almost looked very different. At the start of Demolition Man, there's a dramatic scene where John Spartan arrives by helicopter to capture Simon Phoenix in a burning, war-torn Los Angeles. It's fast, tense, and full of energy. Exactly what you'd expect from a big action movie. However, that scene almost looked very different. Originally, director Marco Brambilla and his team had planned to use a blimp instead of a helicopter. The idea was to show Spartan arriving in a slow, hovering airship, which might have created a more eerie and futuristic atmosphere. But when they began setting up the scene, they quickly realized that the combination of fire effects and strong winds made using a blimp way too risky. So, for safety reasons, they scrapped the idea and switched to the helicopter. That last-minute change turned out to be a solid move. The helicopter entrance, followed by Stallone bungee jumping onto a rooftop while under heavy fire, instantly sets the tone for what feels like a high-stakes action movie. A fan critiqued, "While I think blimps are cool, that helicopter scene with Stallone bungee jumping to the rooftop while under fire set the tone for a great action movie. I wish Demolition Man had leaned harder into that than some of the comedy elements naked John Spartan." In Demolition Man, there's a memorable shot of John Spartan frozen naked in cryo-sleep. What you're seeing isn't Sylvester Stallone. It's a lifelike mold created by a special effects team. That same team would later go on to build the animatronics for Jumanji. The frozen body was sculpted with Stallone's input. According to producer Joel Silver, Stallone had strong opinions about how certain parts should look. Sly wanted to make sure the genital area was huge and appeared to have a strong masculine side of him there, Silver said. This wasn't a one-off prop either. Several versions of the frozen Spartan were made. While the main version was built for the film, Stallone had additional molds created and sent to Planet Hollywood restaurants. These were used as display pieces, placed in glass cases, and shown off as part of the restaurant's collection of movie memorabilia. So if you ever walked into a Planet Hollywood in the 90s and saw a full-size frozen Stallone on display, that wasn't a replica of the film prop. It was one of the film props. It's a weird detail, but not surprising. Demolition Man is a movie full of over-the-top visuals and bold design choices. Even a brief shot of a character in suspended animation received the complete Hollywood treatment, including custom sculpture, production input, and eventual product placement in themed restaurants. Cryotech and future cars. The cryogenic technology in Demolition Man wasn't just made up for the movie. A concept from literature actually inspired the design of the freezing canister. Specifically, it drew from Cat's Cradle, a novel by Kurt Vonnegut. In the book, there's a fictional substance called Ice-9. It's a form of water that's been restructured to freeze at room temperature. The dangerous part is that once it touches any regular water, it causes that water to freeze as well permanently. The idea of Ice-9 helped shape how Demolition Man portrayed cryo-freezing, fast, total, and irreversible without special handling. The movie's version isn't identical, but the concept of instantly freezing a person in a tank owes a lot to Vonnegut's idea of crystallization spreading through contact. It's a small reference, but a smart one that gives the film's science fiction elements a little more weight. Another detail that grounded the film's future world was the design of the vehicles. Instead of building all new futuristic cars from scratch, the production team got help from General Motors. GM loaned several vehicles to the film, including a rare concept car called the Ultralight. At the time, General Motors had only built one working model of the Ultralight, but for the movie, the studio needed more. So GM had several additional cars constructed just for Demolition Man. These real working concept cars helped sell the idea of a believable future without ballooning the film's budget. It's a practical solution that gave the movie its sleek look. The real Los Angeles behind the chaos. The opening of Demolition Man throws viewers straight into a chaotic, burning Los Angeles. Buildings are destroyed, smoke fills the air, and the city looks like a war zone. What makes that scene more powerful is that it was filmed only 6 months after the actual LA riots in 1992. While the film is set in a dystopian version of the city's future, the visual tone is rooted in something that has just happened. At the time, the scars from the riots were still fresh, both physically and emotionally. The production didn't need to imagine total urban collapse from scratch. They were building off a very real sense of unrest. That said, not everything from the riots made it into the movie. One rumor that still floats around is that the iconic Hollywood sign was set on fire during the riots. That never actually happened. In the film, though, the burning sign became a symbol of LA's collapse, adding to the dramatic impact of the opening. Later in the movie, when the characters walk through the Hall of Violence in the museum, there's another quiet nod to actual events. According to director Marco Brambilla, the photos shown on the walls of that exhibit are actual images from the 1992 riots. It's a subtle detail, but it grounds the film's fictional violence in real-world history. And here's a fun extra. The words Hall of Violence, printed above the museum exhibit, use the same font as the video game Diablo, which had just come out at the time. A slight touch, but a clever one for anyone paying attention. San Angeles was really Orange County. In Demolition Man, the future city of San Angeles looks clean, modern, and almost too perfect. But the primary filming location wasn't some massive futuristic set. Most of the exterior shots were done in Orange County, California. Initially, the production team hoped to shoot in San Diego and San Francisco to capture a broader look for the city of the future. But budget constraints forced them to rethink that plan. While there's a quick glimpse of the San Diego Convention Center as Spartan and Huxley drive to Taco Bell, the majority of the city scenes were filmed elsewhere, mainly in Irvine. The filmmakers chose Irvine because many of its buildings, built in the 1970s and 80s, already had a futuristic and community-oriented outlook. Their clean lines and neutral colors worked well for the vision of a city rebuilt after a massive earthquake. That's also why there are no historic buildings shown in the film. San Angeles, in this future timeline, had to be constructed from the ground up after disaster struck. One of the more memorable moments in the film is when Simon Phoenix takes on a group of officers outside. The whole scene feels fast and chaotic, which makes sense because it was shot in a rush. According to the crew, that entire fight sequence was filmed in a single afternoon. It was done outdoors, and the budget didn't allow for blocking off the street for more than a few hours. They had to move quickly, get the shots they needed, and clear out before traffic could resume. Despite the time crunch, the scene came together nicely and holds its own alongside the film's more elaborate action moments. Taco Bell almost collapsed during the franchise wars. One of the strangest and funniest details in Demolition Man is that Taco Bell ends up as the only surviving restaurant after the so-called franchise wars. In the future, every restaurant is Taco Bell, fine dining, and all. This odd bit of world building actually came from a practical place during production. When the team was deciding which chain to feature, they needed a brand that wouldn't mind being part of an R-rated action movie. According to the filmmakers, Taco Bell didn't hesitate. They weren't afraid of the rating, said one producer. They thought maybe it'd be a good idea to do the tie-in. Taco Bell went all in. The company even shot commercials to match the film's version of a classy, futuristic Taco Bell. Though they never aired widely, they were part of the promotional plan. Years later, the future Taco Bell experience was brought back for real, only briefly. At San Diego Comic-Con, a pop-up version of the Demolition Man Taco Bell opened for fans. It recreated the restaurant exactly as seen in the movie, complete with themed meals. GameSpot even visited and covered the whole thing. If you look closely inside the Taco Bell scene, you'll spot a familiar face, Dan Cortese from MTV Sports. He's the one playing the piano during the meal. At the time, he was also the spokesperson for Burger King, which makes his appearance here kind of ironic. But it gets weirder. Cortese actually plays two different characters in Demolition Man. He's not only the piano player at Taco Bell, but he also shows up as a guard at the cryo prison. You could say it's one of those casting choices that make rewatching the film even more fun. Demolition Man were right about some predictions. In the utopian future of Demolition Man, everyone in San Angeles carries a biometric implant. These tiny devices are used as ID, medical trackers, and digital wallets. People wave their hands to pay for things, access buildings. At the time, it seemed futuristic, but the world is already catching up. Today, medical implants are used to monitor conditions like diabetes or control pacemakers. And with NFC technology built into smartphones and smartwatches, People are already comfortable tapping to pay or unlock things. The idea of putting that same tech directly into your hand is no longer science fiction. In fact, some companies are already experimenting with subdermal chips for workplace access and payments. Demolition Man saw where things were headed and got there decades early. Another piece of tech that feels surprisingly modern is the tablet computer used by the cryo prison warden. He walks around with a sleek device in his hand, checking inmate data, streaming video calls, and handling tasks on the go. Back in 1993, tablet computers did exist. However, they were bulky, expensive, and far from practical. They definitely didn't support full video communication. That level of mobile power wouldn't become common until the rise of smartphones and tablets in the late 2000s. So while some tech predictions in the movie were exaggerated or stylized, this one landed pretty close to reality. The film's version of a tablet looks and works a lot like the devices we use every day now. Turns out, the warden was holding a glimpse of the future. Video calling and self-driving cars. Demolition Man. Saw it coming in Demolition Man. There's a moment of unexpected nudity during a video call that definitely wouldn't pass quietly today. What's more interesting is how the call starts. It starts automatically, without anyone having to accept it. That little detail hits closer to our present than you'd think. Video calling did exist before the film came out in 1993, but it was slow, expensive, and nowhere near the seamless experience we have now. It took the rise of broadband internet and smartphones for everyday video calls to become practical. Apps like Zoom and FaceTime finally delivered what Demolition Man hinted at. The automatic connection in the film even feels like a prediction of how we now worry about privacy and digital consent. And let's be honest, that scene might be one of the earliest depictions of what would eventually become sexting. Another piece of tech the movie nailed is self-driving cars. In the future world of San Angeles, almost all the vehicles drive themselves. Passengers sit back while the car handles everything, even traffic stops and rerouting. The only exception in the movie is a red Oldsmobile, kept as a relic of the past. Today, that future is here. Companies like Google have already logged hundreds of thousands of miles with autonomous vehicles, and we're now seeing driverless taxis in some cities. The idea of relaxing while your car takes you across town is happening. When Demolition Man showed off video calls and self-driving cars, it was giving a real glimpse at the kind of tech that would shape daily life 30 years later. Sandra Bullock replaced Lori Petty as Lenina Huxley. Sandra Bullock wasn't the first choice for the role of Lieutenant Lenina Huxley in Demolition Man. Initially, the part went to Lori Petty, best known at the time for Point Break, A League of Their Own, and later, Tank Girl. She was cast early, even filmed a scene with Sylvester Stallone, but the pairing didn't click. According to producer Joel Silver, Petty left the project due to creative differences. Director Marco Brambilla later confirmed the same, saying simply, it just wasn't working. Apparently, Petty had the energy and presence, but her tone didn't quite match what the filmmakers were looking for. With Stallone's gritty action hero already set, they needed a co-star who could balance the violence with lightness and curiosity, someone who could help guide the audience into the sanitized world of the future without it feeling forced. That's when Sandra Bullock came in. Bullock had just started to gain traction in Hollywood. Stepping into the role of Huxley gave her one of her first central breakout performances. Her mix of optimism, awkwardness, and action readiness brought charm to a film that could have easily tilted too dark or too goofy. Bullock gave Huxley a lasting identity and helped turn Demolition Man into the classic it is today. Contested origins and cut scenes. Not everyone agrees that Demolition Man was purely a Hollywood original. Hungarian sci-fi writer István Németh claims the movie's story closely mirrors his 1986 novel Holtak Harka, or Fight of the Dead. In his book, a terrorist and a counterterrorism agent are cryogenically frozen and later revived in a future where violence has been wiped from society. Németh believes the film's core plot was lifted directly from his work and says he has evidence to prove it. Still, he's never pursued legal action, saying he can't afford to take the studio to court. Also, while the final version of Demolition Man leans into comedy and slick action, the original cut was much darker. The first version ran over 2 hours and included far more graphic violence, particularly from Simon Phoenix. One major scene that was removed involved Phoenix killing Zachary Lamb, played by Bill Cobbs. Other cut scenes involve Spartan fighting more of the criminals Phoenix released from cryoprison, some of whom disappear without explanation in the final cut. One of the most significant deleted moments involved Phoenix encountering his adult daughter living underground. It would have added an emotional edge to the character, but the scene was dropped to tighten the runtime and tone. On the flip side, some material was left in with almost no filtering. For example, Dennis Leary's dialogue, his rants, especially when his character Edgar Friendly lays into the state of the sanitized future, were mainly improvised. "I had to write that and pass it through their studio system to get it okayed," he said in an interview. "It took forever. Forever." If there were ever a Mount Rushmore built for action movie legends, Sylvester Stallone's face would absolutely earn a spot. Who else belongs up there is a whole different debate, but watching Demolition Man again is a solid reminder of just how good Stallone is, beyond the roles he's most known for. Which of these facts did you hear for the first time? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into Stallone's world, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more movie secrets.